Imagine you're an indie developer. You've spent days, weeks, even months developing and polishing your brand new game. It's your magnum opus, easily the project you've spent the most time working on, and you're rapidly approaching a release to the public with every new update. On top of that, you've cultivated a massive audience of people excited to play your game. From this point onward, what is the worst thing that could happen? Well, for indie developer Unomelon, creator of Alameria, that answer came in the form of an AI-automated DMCA takedown notice from none other than Microsoft. It was stated to be copyright infringement. Alameria was too visually similar to the likes of Minecraft, and thus was forcibly taken off of Steam by Microsoft. All at once, the weeks and months put into this game, this passion project, were suddenly in jeopardy, and Alameria was on the verge of a potential collapse. The safest thing to do is just roll over and die, basically. Allow them to delete the game. If I do fight it, then I could be ruined by a very large corporation. Luckily, Unomelon was able to make a plea to his audience, which included several influencers and content creators, and eventually Microsoft's hand was forced. The game was then reinstated back on Steam the following day, leaving many left to wonder, why? Why did Microsoft target this one lone, relatively obscure indie game out of all of the other block games out there and threaten to remove it entirely from Steam? Is it really just a Minecraft clone? Or is there something more than meets the eye? Today we're going to be answering all of these questions, learning the truth about Alameria, the game that was silenced by Microsoft. It's impossible to talk about Alameria without mentioning the blocky elephant in the room. This game is clearly inspired by Minecraft. The setup of spawning in a voxel-based world, forced to survive as the days are safe and the nights are full of monsters, has been the set-in-stone status quo since the Obama administration. In the nearly 17 years since Minecraft's inception, the game has existed in, more or less, a class of its own. Sure, there have been other games throughout the years that have tried to mimic its art style or gameplay loop, but only in the past couple years or so have games earnestly tried to offer complete alternative takes to the Minecraft formula. Games like Hytale, Lucid, Voima, and now Alameria are all attempting to take what Minecraft established and reinvent it in their own way. While most people are excited about these games, there are some who write off any attempt to compete with Minecraft as a cash grab or a ripoff. And this guy said it was the ugliest game he had seen in his life. Jeez. Obviously to most people this assertion is ridiculous. With any revolutionary piece of art, there's always going to be people trying to improve on the formula established by said art. For every Pokemon, there's a Digimon Cassette Beast or Pal World. For every Harvest Moon, there's a Stardew Valley, Dinkum, or Fields of Mystria. And given that Minecraft certainly has issues that could be improved upon, and it's not exactly in the best place right now, it's no surprise that there are people earnestly trying to give their own take on the block game genre. That said, I know a lot of people, including perhaps Microsoft themselves, who are going to look at Alameria as nothing more than a Minecraft clone. So let me explain all of the ways in which Alameria sets itself apart from Minecraft, as a unique interpretation of a genre that's been set in stone since 2009. The second you open Alameria, there's one difference that's immediately noticeable: the atmosphere. Since Minecraft's 1.0 release, it's always been something of a grounded world, relatively speaking. The overworld is built to be not too dissimilar to our real world, both in terms of the terrain itself and the critters living in each biome. The commitment to a supposed realism is to the point where Mojang has outright removed planned features from production due to their lack of accuracy to real-world biology. This isn't to say that Minecraft can't be out there, but I think that the overworld, for the most part, is indeed supposed to resemble our real-world Earth. Alameria, however, has an atmosphere that I can only describe as surreal. The colors are all vibrant and saturated, creatures made of cotton candy roam the land, and the sunset turns the sky this distinctive shade of purple. It's all fantastical, already a great start in terms of setting itself apart from other games in its genre. That isn't to say that everything is different. You still have zombies and skeletons that spawn at night, but they're joined by these floating blob guys and cloaked wizards with glowing eyes. Alameria has a very distinctive flavor when it comes to its atmosphere and aesthetic. It reminds me much more of something like Alice in Wonderland or Adventure Time, where mushrooms can be found everywhere and creatures defy all logic and reason. The aesthetic gives this mystification aspect to Alameria, where you never know what you might find out in the world. The moment I spawned in, I immediately got to work finding resources. In order to start progressing, I needed flint and wood. Flint I could get from the ground, and wood I could get from the age-old task of punching trees. From there I went looking for shelter. As I mentioned earlier, the terrain in Alameria is a lot more exaggerated, which makes it much easier to find a cliff to dig shelter into. It also means that the terrain is some of the coolest stuff you will ever see in a block game. As I wandered looking for a place to make camp, I noticed a wild boar that I could kill for meat. Just a regular wild boar. Nothing weird or out there, just a pig. You know, in a world with cotton candy monsters and sentient blobs of evil that float at you, I feel like the main source of food should not be something I could find at the local petting zoo. After killing the boar, I realized something very interesting. Controversially, Alameria does not have a hunger bar. It does have sprinting, but it's something you have to earn by progressing through the game. Now, if you know me, you know I'm all for taking hunger out of survival games for the most part. More often than not, it's just a menial, pointless meter you have to fill by holding right-click every now and then while you're doing something unrelated. It's rarely integrated into a game in an interesting way. Alameria has food directly fill your health bar, but each piece of food you eat has a 20-second cooldown before you can eat again. That way you can't eat yourself into a food coma like you could in old Minecraft. This is, in my incredibly humble opinion, way better than the hunger system. Now I still have to keep food on me in case I take damage for something, but I can control how much food I need to consume by evading enemy attacks or killing the enemies quicker. In situations where a mechanic is less of a challenge and more of a hindrance, I think it's much better to allow that player to control how much that mechanic affects them through their own skill and game knowledge. This change does that, and I think that's neat. After finding this really cool cliff ledge overlooking some floating islands, I got to work making my shelter. This leads to me talking about hands down the best part of Alameria, the building. Oh my gosh, the building. When I first discovered this game on Steam like a year ago, this feature was the thing that made me the most excited. By just holding down the R key, you can transform nearly every block in the game into one of 6 different shapes. No crafting, no mods, no bullshit. Just hold down R and you can make dirt fences, stair lamps, or light up floors. Alameria's more saturated color palette already lends itself toward more creative building, but this is a next level change. I know there are mods in Minecraft that allow you to do something similar to this, but this implementation of it is way smoother than anything I've ever used before. And the fact that you can do it with nearly every block in the game, dude, limitless possibilities. And of course, there's a hammer tool, which allows you to change existing blocks into whatever shape you want, just by hitting them. Did I mention that this game is in alpha? Not beta, alpha. And it's already lapping the best games in the genre in terms of the amount of control you have over your building abilities. Not to mention that there is a bunch of out there weird stuff you can make and add to your builds. For instance, I needed a way to get up to my house on the cliff easily from the ground. In Minecraft, I would have built a cool staircase, a ladder, or a waterfall. All things I can also do in Alameria, of course, but in this game I can make trampolines that allow me to jump higher. It's additions like this that make the game feel really authentic. It doesn't feel like a big team with a big budget is trying to mimic what made Minecraft special. It's just one guy throwing things into his take on the game to make it his own, and I think that it's being done really, really well. Also, just to add a small touch that I really like, Alameria doesn't use a binary lighting system, where all the light is only one tone. Instead, various sources of light emit all sorts of different colors, resulting in an overall much more colorful and atmospheric game. As I finish my home, I look out into the distance and see a large tree stump with lanterns around it. I look around the lanterns and notice that there's a locked door preventing entry into the tree, and I can't break any of the surrounding wood to enter inside. According to the door, I need the forest key to enter. But where am I supposed to find that? Well, that leads me nicely into discussing Alameria's progression system. Now, keep in mind, this game is still in alpha, so it doesn't have a super detailed, long, and fleshed out path of progression like many other finished games. That said, I think the foundation in place is really interesting and worth talking about. Unlike Minecraft, where progression is determined largely by the gathering of materials, Alameria's progression is much closer to that of Terraria, where player progression is based off how many bosses have been killed. In this demo, there's only one boss present, but the developer has already stated that this is the way in which the progression will function for other parts of the game. If you're like me, hearing this got you really excited. A Minecraft-like game where gradually beating bosses is the goal sounds super fun, and to have a block game with that feeling of becoming stronger and stronger would have the potential to be one of the most awesome games ever. And the Forest Spirit, the first and only boss, does not disappoint. This boss can be accessed one of two ways. Either you find an ominous deer skull in underground dungeon chests, or you kill enough enemies to be able to craft one out of 10 skull fragments. Either way, this boss is something you will come across naturally in your travels at some point, which I think is awesome. What I don't think is awesome is how stupidly difficult it is for the point in the game in which you'll likely fight it. Most first bosses in games like this are supposed to be a challenge, but relatively simple provided you've gotten through the first or second tier of gear. You can beat Terraria's Eye of Cthulhu first try on your first playthrough without really knowing what you're doing. It's not a super big challenge, because it's not really meant to be one. It's just supposed to give you a taste of boss beating, so you can be encouraged to keep attempting bosses throughout your playthrough. The first boss of any game is supposed to get you accustomed to how bosses work, while also acting as a basic progression barrier, ensuring that the player has learned the bare minimum required to play the game. The Forest Spirit, on the other hand, is an absolute nightmare to fight. If you have anything under silver, you can basically forget it. It does enough damage to kill you in 2 or 3 hits if you're not using the absolute best armor you can get at this point. And its primary way of fighting is through projectiles that are nigh impossible to dodge. I get wanting to make the first boss of the game a massive challenge for the player to overcome, so that the reward that comes after is all the sweeter, but I think the Forest Spirit is still probably a bit overtuned. That said, I really do like its design. Having it be a bipedal moose creature is very fitting for the environment, while also being pretty intimidating. Also, for as much as I think the difficulty of the Forest Spirit is a bit too high, the reward you get is an entirely new set of tools and weapons to find and collect, which I think is certainly worthwhile. And forcing the player to interact with as much of the first tier of progression as possible before moving on is ultimately good for pacing the game out, even if I still think the boss is a bit too hard. If I could describe Almeria with one word, it would be whimsy. This game is clearly a love child of a ton of different influences and inspirations packed into one blocky package, and I really like it. There are so many weird out there ideas that you wouldn't really find anywhere else, like an equipable jumping beam that makes you do 20% more melee damage, but also makes you jump constantly, or a working basketball hoop with a basketball. These things aren't super cohesive with any one theme, but I honestly think that they don't have to be. Almeria is already focused on encouraging the player's creativity, and I think things like this add to that sense of wonder. It's awesome to open a chest and genuinely have no idea what you might find, rather than seeing the same set of loot every time in certain other games. The game is clearly not finished, but the developer is still pumping out regular updates despite Microsoft's attempt to take the game down, so I have no doubt that the game will become even more exceptional as it's polished and added to. Seriously, the developer managed to put out an entire major update to the demo just 3 days after the Microsoft scandal happened. This guy is the definition of the phrase, "the grind never stops," and he deserves all of the props in the world for it. I've heard a few people say that Microsoft's DMCA takedown is being overblown, that it didn't matter ultimately because it was reverted a day later or done by an AI bot or whatever, but in an era where Nintendo is trying to copyright the entire Pokemon formula, and Microsoft themselves have been willing to monitor private player conversations in order to ban Minecraft accounts, it's important to stand against corporations who attempt to take down smaller, untested creators who try to compete against them. Microsoft should not be able to wave its billion-dollar magic wand and make competition disappear. After all, competition is one of the best ways to force companies to improve. Having games like Almeria push the boundaries of what a block game can be is important for the genre, and the gaming market as a whole. I think Almeria has the potential to become something excellent, and I highly recommend checking out the demo on Steam. There's already built-in multiplayer, so feel free to try it out with a few friends while you're at it. The link will be in the description. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoy the video and want to see more indie game reviews and coverage. And as always, stay lucid. Bye-bye.